I didn't mean to get your way, man.
I would say the part about the idea that.
You doing well.
You doing fine, everybody always.
We're all around.
So it's over here.
Okay.
It's over there.
You see this one? Oh,
This is what they're on.
Okay.
This is. It's the same.
Now we got more of them.
Oh, yeah.
More than one.
It's because of that one guy.
No, I guess we could.
With the line. So.
I got the ordinance here.
So, we're trying to.
But you know, they got all those. This whole street. So it's going, they're going to up. They know that. Which was going from home. Yeah, because you don't have all that.
Do you want me
It's available, absolutely. Okay, fantastic.
Use the middle or. Like there, it has a whole, like, kind of one lot, actually. You know, it is all about.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we go ahead and reserve that.
But if you have all these, sure, it's still
Absolutely.
You can, okay, like the dam, like artists.
Thank you. What did she promise you? She's gonna bring me with me?
No, she's seeing.
Just leave it. Are you doing it? All right.
Because she said, God was one email, she goes, come on, my USB, my house.
All right, well, we're up.
I have them. Yeah, just come back to it, when she gets there.
We'll give her.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll sit back and give you one second.
Okay. It's so. I guess I'll be good. This last thing, so.
Yes.
Call the meeting to order. First of all, I want to thank Keith Griffin for taking over for me last month. I adored myself down in Florida City. So I appreciate that. Board member one for the meeting for the Transportation Policy Committee is 12:30 here on June the 27th. Next item will begin the roll call.
Thanks, sir. Bullock County. Aquí. City of Charlestown. City of Jeffersontown. Oh, Matt Meunier is in the building. He's not in the room. He's in the building. Step outside. City of Jeffersonville. City of New Albany.
Here.
We see you. Thank you, Claire. City of Shively.
Here.
Hi, Mayor.
No.
City of St. Matthews.
Here.
Thank you, guys. Clark County.
Brian Dixon here.
Brian. Floyd County. I think Nick Creevy's on vacation this week, so we'll catch up with him later. Let's see. Next up is NDOT.
Taylor Heron.
Hi, Taylor. I saw Kathy's name. Hi, Kathy, if you can hear us.
Yep. Kathy McCall's here as well.
Thank you for joining us. Jefferson County League of Cities.
Here.
Thank you. Kentucky Transportation Cabinet,
Here, see what I got.
let's see, Joe. Let's see, anybody else from KYTC on the line? I don't believe there is quite yet, so, no, Tom Hall is, hi, Tom.
Lovely.
Yes, Tom Hall, KYTC District 5.
Hey, Tom. Louisville Metro Government,
Mike King.
I might. I think I saw Brian Davis, I see Brian.
Yeah, I'm here.
Tracy Lovell just joined from KYTC, thank you for joining us, Tracy. And Jennifer Kern as well, thank you all both for joining us. Louisville Regional Airport Authority. So how about Oldham County?
Jim Urban here, and Joe Ender, Deputy Judge, is going to join in just a minute.
Okay, thank you all for joining us. Town of Clarksville. I know Kevin said he couldn't be here, but I think I saw, let's see, Mike, are you on there? Yeah, there you are, or I see your name.
Yeah, I'm on.
Thank you for joining us. And then Tark.
I'm here, Andy. This is Rob.
Thank you for joining us, Rob. Advisory members, who do we have? Let's see, I see Tanya. Tanya, thank you for joining us. Tom Hall from District 5, thank you for joining us. Tracy from District 5, thank you all for joining us. We've got pretty darn close to perfect attendance. I like to see that, so it's good to see. Thank you all for joining us today.
Okay, good deal. Thank you so much. We do have a quorum, so item number 2 is our May 2024 TPC minutes for the meeting. Motion approved.
So moved. Second.
Any additions or corrections? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Item number 3, the public comment period. Greg, it's yours, sir.
Yes, did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting. This is an opportunity for anyone that is here from the public wants to address the committee at this time. Not seeing any, so believe that will close the public comment period.
I'm sorry, could I go back to the agenda item number 2? I just realized that I'm shown as representing town of Clarksville.
Correct, or that's not correct, yes. Claire's with the City of New Albany.
Okay.
So we will-
And as amended, the minutes as amended with the.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Now we're ready for number 4. Item number 4, public involvement report. Greg, you're again, sir.
Absolutely. Share the screen. Right, be a pretty short report. We'll break down last month's numbers. Website analytics were actually pretty good. We actually saw a bump in both the main page up to 210 visitors. Our tip page also saw a bump in visitors up to 142. MTP remained about the same at 62 visitors. Social media analytics, Facebook took a little bit of a hit, which we were not surprised at all, just because we didn't have any paid advertising this time. But the interesting thing is at the beginning of the month, our numbers were not really good. And then toward the end of the month, they shot up. Also a good thing to see is the engagement numbers remain strong though, but 744 impressions. Also Twitter saw the biggest increase up to 2.4 thousand impressions. And I think we were around 1,000 last month, so that's good to see. Unfortunately, Twitter has now changed their analytics a little bit. You have to be a paid member to view all the analytics, so I can only show impressions now. But still good, 2.4. And Instagram also saw a increase, 452 impressions, 22 engagements. In total, 3.6 thousand impressions and 253 engagements. Several events. We went to Waterfront Wednesday at the end of the month. That was really good. Not a lot of people came by to talk and chat. Didn't want to write down any public comments, but they did want to chat about things with communication, with transportation. And we did the Middletown Chamber of Commerce meeting and the Kentucky Association of Government Communicators as well. Like I said, pretty short and sweet this month. That wraps it up unless anybody's got questions. I will take them.
Any questions? All right, let's move on to number 5. We have a guest speaker for us, and Andy's going to introduce this young lady.
Yes, sir. Jennifer Kirchner is here.
You mean there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please. Should be a pick her up there for you too. So Jennifer Kirchner's here, Executive Director of the Kentuckians for Better Transportation. And so we asked Jennifer to come and talk a little bit about the session that just ended in Frankfurt and some of the work that KBT's got going on. And Jennifer, it's a pleasure.
Great, you have some slides for me.
Yes, ma'am.
To be a.
On the
I
way.
was supposed to come with the USB and that didn't work out. Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry to have my back to you. Hello to you guys too. I appreciate being here with you today. You know, from where I sit, I think our ad districts and our MPOs are one of the most critical pieces to a functioning transportation system, especially where we are now with federal funds and state funds. So really, I appreciate being here, and I appreciate the challenging work that you all take on to do. And it is challenging. So I'm Jennifer Kirshner, like Andy said. I'm the director of KBTs, probably how you know us by. I've been there since December 2020. And you know, simply put, our mission is to educate and advocate for a sustainable funding structure for all modes of transportation. So we have active committees in river, rail, air, road networks, which encompasses streets, roads, highways, and we also have a safety committee. So each of those committees really establishes our policy going forward at the state level. And we started with, Andy mentioned, I'm here to talk about session 2024, and we started talking about session 2024 as soon as I started as director in 2020. So it was a very long process, but really quite rewarding. There are just very talented people that are in leadership roles in all of the modes of transportation. So hammering out what works, what doesn't, what can we do better was really a great process for me to learn a lot about it. And I will say, when we say sustainable, of course, we mean environmentally, but truly we mean from a funding mechanism perspective. So take roads, for example, there's the user fee of the motor fuels tax. So that, where you pay into the system, the user pays back into the system, that's considered a sustainable funding mode. But as you know, and we'll get into this, there's really nothing that's great about the motor fuels tax now. It's not functioning at the state or the federal level. So, but really what we're trying to do is set up some sort of long-term funding mechanism so that planning can happen. I know I don't need to tell you that transportation projects are very expensive and lengthy. So to not get it right the first time is a problem. So we have over 300 members. They range, I would think we're about 60% private and 40% public. So we have the ad districts, local governments, and then our members span all of the modes, from engineers to consultants, as well as suppliers. So we really try to touch every level of our members to understand where the opportunities are. And let me just make sure. Yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit about session 2024. Sorry if some of you all followed it. I know it was riveting, but I'll just give a little bit of background to get us started. So one of the things that became our goal was, during interim session last summer, was to get a task force that discussed multimodal transportation. So Senator Howe and Representative Miles were both co-chairs of that committee. And over the length of the committee's duration, through really, I think it was June through November, we were able to put all of our different modes, manufacturers, community interests, judges in front of the task force to really represent the value of what a multimodal transportation system means and is for the state of Kentucky. Again, I'm preaching to the choir, but where we are located geographically, we need to be a logistics hub. We're leaving money at the door if we don't up our game. So that was a big message, and the legislature responded quite well to that. So the General Assembly, there was about 1,200 bills that were filed and about 240 that were enacted. That's pretty standard. So the big message from this past session was, and it will continue to be true, is that our General Assembly their number one goal is to reduce everyone's income tax. And to do that, they put certain triggers in, so they couldn't just haphazardly reduce it. It had to make sense. So in order for them to do, you heard a lot about our reserves, and we had a surplus. In order for them to use that funds as one-time investment, they put it all in House Bill 1, not in the budget bill. So in the budget bill, you had they met all the triggers, so you will see your income tax go down again. So this was a strategic move on their part to not have the surplus negatively impact their goals going forward. So we became aware of that. It was obviously it's House Bill 1. So we worked closely with Leader Rudy and others. And we really were able to take the work that we had done from our committee structure and give those ideas to the legislature, either through the task force or as session started. And we were able to get all of the modes of transportation to get a funding allocation from the surplus. So we'll go through it in a little bit more detail, but so aviation, for example, has never received state funds. They operate from a jet fuel tax. Rail never had seen state investment before. So I will give this one caveat, we're thrilled with the transportation investment and very grateful to the General Assembly. But again, this isn't quite where we want to be because this is not sustainable funding. So a lot of these funds, hopefully we'll be able to use matching as a grant match, so we can draw down federal funds. But say building a dock at a river port, right? It takes a lot of planning. It can take upwards nearly 7 years by the time you get all of the funding pieces together and whatnot. So the one-time investment, and then what are we gonna do again? Go back in 2026 and ask for this all again? And what if there's not a surplus? So it's an excellent outcome. I think a lot of the money that was given to the modes of transit allowed us to catch up some and do a lot of infrastructure preservation. But it didn't necessarily answer what are we going to do again in the future so that we don't end up here over and over again. And feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. So let's talk a little bit about House Bill 1. So it's about 500, and we'll just say 50 million of investment in infrastructure. So it's broken down there in kind of general terms, and then we'll go into a little bit of detail into each mode. And then I will wrap up. So road fund got a $450 million general fund transfer. That is unprecedented. 18.5 million towards the Riverport asset preservation program. 35 million for our commercial airports and about 30 million for rail. And all have really great programs associated with them. So the $450 million to the general fund from the road fund is really what was the sticking point in the negotiation of House Bill 1. So I will tell you, this is just speculation. I do not have this on authority like a lot of politics works. But so the Senate through Senate Chair Higdon the Senate came back to reply to House Bill 1 and they had $890 million. And that is what they decided was necessary to get Kentucky's roads and bridges and streets back to where they need to be. Maintenance backlog is epic. Well, they landed at 450 million. So the 450 million is on its way out the door, but there is discussion that as they come back in 2025, even though it is not a budget session, if there are transportation projects that specifically will be part of economic development projects, they are saying, we think, that they will reopen it to make some additional transportation allocations. So my 2 cents on that would be, if you have a project you have a really good argument for, that's in the later stages of development, there's a lot of support, be ready with it as session starts. I think that there's a lot of people making a lot of valid arguments of why they need money, but all signs point to they want to give out that money. They just want to make sure that it goes to worthy projects. So be prepared. So let's talk a little bit about road funding. So the transportation bills, the main ones were House Bill 265, House Bill 266, and then House Joint Resolution 91 and 92. It's all, I think, sometimes I think it's clear as mud on purpose. But really what you need to know is that House Bill 265 sets up the Transportation Cabinet's budget. We didn't see very many changes in this except when it came to the road project, or not many changes for the other modes. Public transit stayed relatively the same. Aviation, as I mentioned, had the jet fuel tax. River ports historically had been given $500,000 a year to divide between 10 river ports. for funding, which is pretty easy to say, what, that doesn't work, does it? Can we do a better job? So we had that in there as a placeholder to have the recurring mechanism in place, but we did a lot better in the one-time allocation. So worth noting in the road plan, I think that there was a lot of discussion between the General Assembly and the Transportation Cabinet. And the General Assembly really wanted verification of how projects were being funded. Where's it going? How are you determining that? So the General Assembly set up 2 new programs in this budget. And, you know, I think that they're similar to what the cabinet's done before, but in the cabinet's defense, it's a lot of work for them to figure out. So we're watching, you know, the funds aren't really available in most cases until July 1. So, you know, they have their work cut out for them. So we're happy to support them in figuring some of that out and as they work through it. But it's the County Priority Projects Program, which will get $20 million per fiscal year for the next 2 years. And the biennial highway construction plan, obviously, is the 2-year road plan. And then the county and city bridge improvement program is another 25 million each year over the course of 2 years. So specifically the county priority projects and the county and city bridge improvement program are new programs. Rural secondary, you're probably familiar with, is adept at dealing with this, but these have different reporting measures. So for example, once the cabinet develops this list, they'll have to go and get approval from the General Assembly. That hasn't happened before. So we're all kind of waiting to see how that process works. Really the thing that matters to me is that by the time we get to the next budget cycle, we've exhausted these funds. So we're in a good position to say, we got the money out the door, let's go to the next batch that we need. So if you were interested in a deep dive into the road plan, that you would need 265, 266, and those 2 joint resolutions. So your projects are in there if you want to look. That's not my expertise, but I'm sure there's plenty of ways to see if you're in there. If you're not in there, again, I would be ready for budget session to see if there's an opportunity to get some of your projects in. Okay. Is that, I don't have my glasses on, that says reports or aviation.
Aviation.
Okay, terrible, let me make sure I have my right notes. So I mentioned that this was the first time we saw commercial service investment from the state. We have 5 commercial airports in the state of Kentucky, and you'll see the money was divided basically on employments and business. They have a formula that they developed. And then our general aviation airports, so that was a huge win for commercials. You know, I will add, we often don't think, why would CVG make money? They're doing so well. But when you talk about infrastructure investment and upkeep, it's a lot of money to have the Amazon stay there, or for UPS to have to be able to stay in Louisville. And when you come to federal aviation money, it is very, very restricted. So this was much needed for an investment for capital needs. Our general aviation airports, I think we need improvement here. The General Assembly did the same thing that they had done last budget session, was to give each general aviation airport $200,000. There's one caveat this time, is that you have to have a monitor and tracking system to track takeoffs and landings. And that's actually, in my opinion, a great effort by the cabinet, by Department of Aviation, because our airports are finding that they were under reporting their use. So sometimes you've got to be careful what you ask for, but in this case, they were undervaluing what their worth was to their local communities. So that's a big part of making our case for economic development impact. $200,000 at the general aviation airport doesn't go very far. Again, I'm sure you can imagine. And they're not operational if there's a light that's not working, or the pavement or the cement is not up to par. So it's a very difficult challenge for them to stay. Really, I think that they are okay at maintaining what they do, but the growth, there's so much growth potential for them, and we can't quite get to that without some sort of better investment. The jet fuel tax that they do get is about $18 million. That hasn't been changed in about 30 years. So it's similar to the motor fuels tax. Raising taxes is not a really popular topic. And you could make an argument that it's really quite an antiquated method anyway. So we're always talking about what's new and what's next. There's a lot of research going on our part, and what are other states doing? How do they fund aviation? Our neighbors to the north in Ohio have a fantastic aviation program. So we've been working with them some. And then I will also mention, although workforce in aviation, although that's not directly related to funding, which is mainly what we do, Senator Storm and Representative Fleming were both critical in Senate Bill 127. And really what that does is there is so much evidence that shows if you expose children to aviation careers at a young age, it really provides an excellent trajectory. And so increasing their experiences from the time they're little all the way through the technical college or the college age, they are good paying jobs. They are, if you become an aviation maintenance technician, you're actually pretty well trained to go into advanced manufacturing, right? So there's a lot of transferable skill, very good paying jobs. So we're very supportive of their effort on that. And a lot of that money will go to, you need to buy a plane if you want to teach kids how to fly and whatnot. So it too can get very costly. Okay, so that's rail, still not my reports, huh? So rail, our new chair at KBT that just took over in June is William Downey. He's with RJ Corman, which is a very successful short line railroad. So I worked very closely with him and he with his railroad partners to come up with two programs that we basically based off of other states. No need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of things that work. So there were some main goals to accomplish with rail. One, how do you make it more enticing, or how do you incentivize our current industries and our current rails to invest in, maybe a spur to create a new site for development. So how do we bring that together to create an incentive? And then there's just a lot of preservation of track that needs to be done too. And we're all aware of the safety matters that is. So this has been a very small but necessary injection into rail. The cabinet is working really hard to stand this program up. It's very new from what we have done in the past. So I think that we're hoping to see calls for funding in this in early fall, maybe like end of September. So I know the railroads are working hard with industries to kind of come up with projects to see how they can take advantage of this fund. I think that'll do it about rail. And then Riverports, I always joke that Riverport is like my favorite child of all of the modes. This one really jumped out as soon as we started, as there was just, nobody had really poked it in quite a while or said, hey, could we do better? So this was really what we jumped into first. And our 10 Riverports, I can't say enough about how well they work together. A lot of hours just hammering out what's going to help these ports, what's going to help all of us. So what we ended up settling on was $18.5 million. So each of the 10 river ports can get $1.5 million over the next 2 years. And it's no match. And as long as they have the funds committed, they don't go away. So we just had a meeting on Monday. The cabinet's already out of the gate on this one and awarded about $6 million to Riverports for various projects ranging from safety to storage, ways to increase their barge traffic. So the Riverport in Kentucky is seeing tremendous growth. It's easy if you're not on the river. Maybe it's easier for you all to realize, but our markets on our river ship to China. We have a global connection right there mostly on our western coast of western edge of Kentucky. So we did a lot of work bringing to light the importance of Riverports. In the General Assembly, especially in the western region, it was an easy sell. They really believe Riverports are rural economic development generators, and so do we. So there was a lot of synergy in what can we do. And the funding has been so behind that in one-time injection of immediate funds was really what we wanted. Not a whole lot of hoops and things to jump through. So that, by all accounts, that seems to be going well. And again, huge props to specifically Jeremy Edgeworth in the cabinet. I think the world of him. I don't know how he's getting all of it done. So, and then there was so that money has to be used for the movement of goods, which was already in an existing KRS. So that was kind of, again, don't reinvent the wheel, what's in place. But that left one river port in Whitcliffe. Well, actually, it's a up and coming river port. They are not at the point where they can move the goods. They are still in the environmental, archaeology, all that good fun. So we were able to get them $250,000 each fiscal year towards those efforts. So, and then they were able to draw down some federal matching funds for that as well. So again, just kind of thinking about the riverport industry in its totality, we have, I've heard a couple different numbers, but we have approximately 160 private ports in Kentucky. And the main difference being is that at a private port, it's going to be industry based. You're going to have that commodity or that element that you need to move. If you're a public river port, you need to be able to accept pretty much anything and everything coming up and down the river. And the other critical part is they're huge to our agriculture system. Our farmers depend on them. If the river port and their grain operators aren't operating correctly, it is direct impact on what the farmers are able to do over the course of a growing season. So we work closely with Farm Bureau on that too. We see a lot of opportunity to do more private public partnerships in river ports. So we made some progress, but still a lot of work to do. And then I think this is my last slide. So I saved the not so good news for last, as you can imagine. So in terms of safety, one of our top issues is work zone safety. Again, I could go on and on about that. You'll see us fighting hard for that in this upcoming session. What we did was we tried to have a bill that other states have seen with great success in terms of passage and reducing work zone fatalities, was a camera or an automated enforcement. Well, we mentioned the word camera to the General Assembly and they basically said, we don't know, we're not doing any of that. That was a total non-starter. So in House Bill 93, with much credit to Representative Blanton, we expanded the definition of what a work zone is, and we also expanded some of the penalties associated with it. So right now we're doing a lot of work and putting our heads together about what we want to do heading into session. It may just be, we're working closely with the cabinet on this. It may not be legislation after all, but this is a priority for our members. It's incredibly important. And too often do we hear really unfortunate accidents for people who lose their lives in work zones. So that'll continue to be a big effort of ours. We were involved in a conversation for autonomous vehicles. All this did really was set up a regulatory framework so we could just start the process. It has been controversial, I think mostly just because it's a foreign concept and everybody's a little skeptical. But there's some really good work going on with that so Kentucky can get in the game and actually just be at the table. When it comes to the road fund, I think we saw some real setbacks. So with EV fees, we were one of 4 states in the country who had put on a kilowatt hour charge. And while not a perfect system, the goal or the point of that is to catch people coming through Kentucky. That's how you would capture the tourist or the visitor through the Commonwealth, that they would have to pay to use our roads. It's a very difficult thing to capture. So what ended up happening was they removed a whole bunch of chargers that are now susceptible to those to that tax. So basically, and this is a very simplistic explanation of it because I'm no expert, but the chargers that you're seeing going on our corridors, they will have the 3-cent kilowatt hour tax, but anything smaller than a supercharger, there won't. So if you go to church and you plug in, or if you go to a distillery and plug in, you won't pay the tax. So for somebody who cares about money in the road fund, that's a bit of a setback. There was also a lot of movement on our part to try and increase the registration fees, which is really the only way we capture the user fees now. And that didn't go well. We didn't get them moved up at all. If you look at all of the registration fees for EVs in the states around us, Kentucky is by far one of the lowest. Most of them are up and over $200. And then the other thing we did that is unfortunate, or maybe not, all depends on how you want to look at it, is if you have a car that is a hybrid you do not have to pay the registration fee any longer. So only if your car is completely plug-in do you qualify for the registration fees. So, I mean, there's a lot of conversation these days about EVs and what that's doing, but I think you can make the argument really easily that the gas tax mechanism had stopped working when we took on CAFE standards in the late 1970s. As the fuel economy increases, you're getting more miles on the road and you're paying for less of them. It's a pretty straightforward problem. So while do we need to increase the gas tax? We sure do, but it's almost like we've waited so long. Now, even at the federal level, you're just seeing these massive general fund transfers because nobody wants to raise taxes. So again, I would argue that's a really unsustainable approach and doesn't allow for planning or fixing any of the mechanisms we have in place. So when it comes to the gas tax or user fee, I guess I shouldn't use the T word. One of the things that we're really gonna push for is to have to change the index on it. So, and this may be too much detail and then I'll stop, but right now, the gas tax is indexed to the average wholesale price. But it is used in the construction realm to pay for roads and bridges and all kinds of aggregates. So in a sense, what we're indexing it to is a bit of apples and oranges. So at a minimum, we would just like to get the gas tax index to the National Construction Highway Index. We think that makes perfect sense because that's what the money is spent on, and we're seeing with inflation, we're seeing tremendous gaps in what costs for projects are. So if you talk to some people, if you chart that over 12 years or so, it has gone up and it has gone down, just as an index should function. But a lot of the General Assembly and when you will say that, oh, that's just another way to get a gas tax increase. So that's kind of what we're fighting and we'll continue to fight, but we really think that that makes perfect sense. And the precedent is that the EV fees were set to the National Construction Highway Index. So one of our arguments is that there should be parity. But that is like rolling a boulder up a hill. So, but if we could get the index, we would feel a lot better about things. But again, it doesn't get us forward. It just helps us not lose the money anymore. It's still not a solution to what's next and how do we fix some of this. I think I'll stop there. I mean, I guess I'll just end with saying we see in the future a vehicle miles traveled system as the way that we need to go. That has all kinds of controversy and questions within it. We're trying to stay very plugged into the different conversations that are happening. The Transportation Cabinet has taken a great lead with the Eastern Transportation Coalition. So we have some access to resources and they're fantastic at doing different pilots in states. But when it comes to the administration of it and how the culture of it, just getting people to a new system, I think we have our work cut out for us, but it's really at a crisis point. We're not making at all close to enough with our user fee to support our transportation needs. So with that, I will end and see if y'all have any questions. Or want me to talk about anything else or be quiet and go?
Yeah, I really do think that this last part is kind of the major issue of our time,
Right.
That in the transportation world, that's fundamental to all the things.
All the things.
All the modes, all the things.
Yes.
And there's not an easy solution. There clearly isn't.
No, and EVs is getting everybody kind of riled up about it, but it has been failing for a long time.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think we're at a crisis point because we've waited so long to do much of anything. So it's very dramatic now, the problem that it is.
Sure is.
What's the temperature of Frankfurt as far as doing something?
So I think that it is not hard to make the argument and get support to say something needs to be done.
Right.
When it comes to raising taxes, it's dead in the water. One thing that we have talked about is can we make it part of a greater tax package where it would offset it? So maybe if your income tax is coming down, you could put a couple, like a penny or two on the gas tax in that whole package. So ultimately you're at the bottom line is that your taxes are being reduced. They're not going up. So some kind of offset. That seems to be the closest we can get to wink, wink, that maybe this will happen. And that's what they're doing at the federal level too. They're sticking it in other things.
Well, you know, the further behind you get, condition of the roads, catching up is going to be monumental.
It is, and I mean, with transportation, I think you see it so well. If you don't do it right the first time, if you just go with the lowest bid, or you just do what you can get done, you pay tenfold what you would have had you been able to do it right in the first place. It's a pretty unforgiving system of investment, so.
No question? No, very good. Very informative.
Thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks so much. Item number 6 is the MPO dedicated cost increase. Action is required here, so Brady's gonna get up and talk to it. Brady?
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so announcement was made, to our Kentucky representatives, TPCC representatives on May 7th via email saying, hey, if you have cost increase requests, get them to us. And then a reminder email sent on May 22nd for cost increase requests. In that time, we received 2 cost increase request applications from our Kentucky sponsors since April TPC. And since June TTCC, we have 1 Indiana cost increase request. So it hasn't been talked about at TTCC, but it was talked about at the Indiana quarterly meeting that happened on June 20th. And so I'll share that with you as well in just a minute. But first, for the 2 Kentucky cost increase requests, requesting funding from the STBG cost increase reserve. One is from KYTC for project Kentucky Highway 2050. It is for the fiscal year 24 design phase. They basically just have additional funding needed to cover KYDC oversight for the project. And so they are requesting $55,200 federal. The total amount needed with the match considered is $69,000. And that's a little box at the bottom is what it would look like in the administrative modification if approved. So a $55,200 federal increase for the design phase for this project, the project. And then the second one is from Oldham County. And you can find these details in your packet as well. This is for their Old Range Road improvements, bicycle and pedestrian trail project. They have a fiscal year 24 right-of-way phase, but they are also just needing a little bit more to cover the costs for this project for KYDC oversight fees and new estimates for the acquisitions that they need. And so they're requesting $25,000 federal in addition to what they currently have programmed, with a total amount, if you include the match, of $39,617. Once again, we can see what that would look like if applied in an administrative modification. So those are the 2 Kentucky requests. Currently in the fiscal year 24 SQBG cost increase reserve balance for this fiscal year, we still have over $1.1 million available. If both of these cost increase requests were approved, that would only reduce it by about $80,000, still leaving us with over $1 million that we could put towards fiscal year 24 phases that need cost increase requests by the end of the fiscal year. The TTCC did recommend approval for those 2 cost increase requests. In this most recent June TTCC. So this is the Indiana one that the June TTCC did not look at because we didn't have the request at the time. But NDOT needs a response from KIPTA on whether or not we are willing to fund this little bit of an extra cost increase request within the next 3 days. So for time, we typically would wait for something like this to have TTCC recommend approval before TPC, but based on the timing, we don't have time to do that. And it's also a very small cost increase request. So this is Clarksville's project. They're 9th Street and Montgomery Avenue multimodal connection. You may remember this project's construction phase was bid and authorized in fiscal year 23. So this project is under construction currently, but as they're through the process of construction, they realize that they need a little bit more money to cover the costs of asphalt, I believe, pavement for the project. And so, they are requesting an additional $14,407 federal TA funds, TA dollars. With the total cost increase with the match being $18,009. So very small request here for this project, already under construction. We're in fiscal year 25 for Indiana, so we currently have $834,000 unprogrammed in Indiana for this fiscal year, which I'll talk more about in the next agenda item as well. But if this were approved, then we'd still have over $819,000 available to program two projects for this fiscal year, and it is in KIP's best interest at this time to get that money towards projects, because if we don't get it towards projects by the end of fiscal year 25, then we lose out. So action requested.
Okay, all those are taking all three together, right?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, okay. Then I need a motion to approve the price increase in these three projects. So then,
Second.
motion second, any questions then? All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries, thank you, sir. Brady, I think you're up on next now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Call the
And this is the more exciting one. This is more fun item. Well, Greg is pulling that up, the golf projects, for 2024, there are 6 federal funding sources that KIPTA has discretion to program towards projects in Indiana. So 6 funding programs in Indiana and 3 programs in Kentucky. So Kentucky, we get CRP funds, SDBG funds, and the Transportation Alternative TA funds. And then in Indiana, we get those, but we also get some additional funds for CMAQ dollars, HSIP dollars, and Protect funds. Who is eligible for these funds, who can apply? So in any local public agency that's located within KIPTA's MPA boundary, which is the thick black outline of the area there, is eligible to apply for funds, with the caveat that all projects that are awarded the MPO dedicated funding have to be located within the MPA boundary in order for the project to be eligible. So I think really the only situation where that specifically applies is Shelby County has some area with our MPA boundary. So they are technically a eligible sponsor, but they can't apply for a project that is located outside of the MPA boundary still. So if there's a project they want to do that's just outside of Shelbyville, even though they're eligible sponsor, they can't apply for funding for that project, if that makes sense. But yeah, any LPA within the MPA boundary is eligible for these funds, to compete for these funds. Total funding available. I'm going to delve into specifically what these numbers mean, but essentially, for Kentucky, there will be over $51 million available to compete for those dollars across the 3 eligible funding sources. And in Indiana, there will be over $12 million available to compete across the 6 funding sources in the years eligible. One note with Indiana is there is a project that is a little up in the air on whether the project sponsor is going to fund it locally or if they were going to use their MPO dedicated funds that have already been awarded, but we're waiting to see on the details of that. So depending on what happens with that project, there could be even more money available in Indiana, that $15 million number you can see there, but I'm not sure on that yet, but we are sure of the $12 million. So let's look at Indiana first. You can see the funding totals there. So in fiscal year 25, there's, well, now that cost increase is approved, there's $819,000 available in fiscal year 25. 2.5 available in fiscal year 26. 2.4 available in fiscal year 27. And you can see as they go on down the line there, fiscal year 30 has not been, that's the only year that hasn't been programmed yet. So that's our anticipated amount for of what we will receive in allocation for fiscal year 2030. You may ask, Brady, how do you know what that number is? The current bill or IIJA funding structure only runs through fiscal year 26. And the answer to that would be that we have taken the number that we anticipate for fiscal year 26 and just extrapolated that out, not increasing it, but keeping it stable. So a conservative estimate, essentially that we are probably likely to have more money in 2030 than we have in 26, but we're not assuming that to be the case. So that's where that fiscal year 2030 estimate comes from what we were programming that year. You can see in fiscal year 29, we're already over programmed, so we don't have any money to spend in that year. And Indiana is different from Kentucky. Indiana doesn't have the carryover balance, so each of these dollar amounts are restricted to the fiscal year that they're allocated to us. Another detail for Indiana, we have that now $819,000 available for fiscal year 25. Excuse me. But we can't wait until the end of the call for projects to award that funding. We need to award that sooner because the final approvals for the call for projects won't be done until next year, early next year. So Indiana sponsors have already began discussions in the recent quarterly meeting that happened on June 20th to get some preliminary requests for how we may spend that money. And so you will hear more about that in the next couple of months as we look for projects to get that fiscal year 25 dollars spent. Another detail, probably last detail for the Indiana side of this call for projects is of the 6 funding sources. NDOT allows us to commingle the 6 funding sources in a given year. So we get a total of around $6 million at NDOT, and that's made up of 700,000 from CMAQ and 3 million from SDBG and all the different various sources that we have. But we're not restricted to that total amount each year. In that we could potentially spend $6 million in 1 year in STBG, and then $3 million the next year in CRP, if that's how it works. They give us that flexibility, but what they do require us is to say, over the course of a span of time, we judge that time to be 10 years. We need to be spending at least 50% of the amount of money that we are allocated by NDOT for each funding program. So we have 6, 3 of the funding programs, we're above that 50% threshold that we're showing. Over time, we're spending at least 50% of the money they're giving us for programming it, or programming to spend it. These 3 funding sources, we are under that 50% threshold or projected that we may be soon. So in other words, we need more projects to program specifically to these 3 funding sources. So eligible projects for these may receive some level of priority over other funding sources for Indiana in order to meet NDOT's funding requirements. And I can get more into detail on how that breaks down if you would like me to, but I don't think we need to in this meeting. Okay, so that's Indiana. I guess any questions about Indiana specifically before I move to Kentucky?
Questions? Move forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Kentucky, we have the 3 funding sources. We'll start with TA funding. And so it's a little different in how we read this chart in Kentucky because of the carryover balance. You can see fiscal year 28 and 29, the last 2 years, those are unprogrammed years. So that's our anticipated amount of TA funding we'll receive in those years. And those are pretty straightforward. And then when you look at the fiscal year 25 dollars, you see that we're over programmed, so we don't have any money to put to fiscal year 25 at this time. And then because it carries over, the total amount of money we have to spend on projects in fiscal year 26 or 27 would be that that $2.2 $2 million number. So the total availability of TA funds is 7.1, and that would be adding up the ending carryover balance right now of fiscal year 27, and then adding fiscal year 28 and 29 projected allocation numbers to it. So 7.1 million available for TA funds. And this same kind of process applies to the other funding sources as well. These are CRP funds. One more clarification of why that makes sense of what I just said. So fiscal year 28, 29, those are full, assumed full allocations. But even though in fiscal year 26 here, it said, it looks like there's over $1 million available in 26, there's really not necessarily $1 million available, because some of that money is anticipated to be programmed in fiscal year 27. That's why the carryover balance in 27 is less than 26. We have more programmed in 27 than we do in 26. So the amount of money that we can spend on either existing project phases or adding an additional phase would be $806,113. If we added a phase to fiscal 26, that's $806,000, and that means that the fiscal year 27 carryover balance would go pretty much to zero. And so our total availability, you can see it below, is at $6.3 million number for CRP. And then this is STBG. This is our funding source. We received the most amount of money. We are fully programmed out through fiscal year 27. And then we have fiscal year 28 and 29 with those full allocations. And that those add up to that $37 million for each of the bottom.
Maybe worth noting here, this is our adjusted allocations. It's taken off the top, that is the cost increase reserve. So,
Yes.
so the amount Gipta's name is actually $4 million more than that or so.
Yeah, so for fiscal year 28, we actually received $23 million or something like that, but the amount that is available for allocation is the 18 numbers. Thank you. Additional funding availability considerations, the TTCC working group, who will, after all, everything is submitted for these bulk projects, will take all of the project scores into account and decide, provide a recommendation for the TTCC and then eventually the TPC on how to spend these dollars. They're gonna have to make a decision on, yes, we have this $51 million available in Kentucky and this $12 million available in Indiana, but how much of that money should go to new projects or new project phases, and how much money should go to existing projects? There are many projects we already have funding that need funding, and it's another opportunity to request funds for them. But the more money you put towards existing projects, the less that's available for new projects. So that'll be a consideration. Other couple notes from the project management guidebook: no more than 5% of the annual allocation of STBG funds shall be used for planning studies specifically. And then the most a single phase can receive from the Kentucky STBG program for a single year is 50% of the adjusted annual allocation. So the adjusted annual allocation is that $18 million number I showed on the previous slide. 50% of that is the cap for a single phase for in a single year for these STBG funds. Here's a schedule. You can probably see it better on your memos, but administrative modifications could go on as needed throughout the process. Amendment 7 deadline that Chris will talk about later. I believe some more is going to be July 19th, something to be aware of. There's a couple of dates you can definitely mark down here. Is the call for projects application opens August 1st. And then we're going to have quarterly meetings the first week of September in both states. Be another opportunity for questions and feedback and things as we're in the middle of this process. And then the other date that's important is the call for projects applications close October 31st. So we're giving a month's notice ahead of the application opening, and then there's several months to actually get your applications in. And so any application beyond October 31st will not be accepted. And you can see the rest of these actions. We're hoping to have a TPC approval of the TTCC's working group's recommendations by the February TPC. So The working group is hoping to meet probably more than once in December, get everything ironed out before the holidays. And we leave room in the schedule, if more discussion is needed in January, we can do that. And then in February, the TPC will take action on the fall projects, and then we will start the process of updating the new tip. Which we are hoping to get, eventually approved by the TPC in May as well. Any questions from me at this time?
Any questions? There's no action required here, appreciate it, okay?
I'll add a comment if I can there. You know, we get asked a lot, hey, does KIPTA have any money to fund this or to fund that? And the answer isn't always yes, we do at that time, but the time is now for those questions we've gotten over the last year or two. Now's the time to put in those projects. And so this summer is time to be thinking about those projects and you can anticipate not having another call, probably at least for a year, perhaps another 2 years. Last two cycles we've done for full 2 years. So this is important stuff and we're trying to give a good lead up. Let's go ahead, Brady was talking about. In this process.
Why do you think it's changed? Surplus.
The surplus in which we were.
And availability.
So some of those, we're at, most of the availability is new money, adding, programming two more years, okay? Some of the change, some of the Indiana changes were based because of some of the moving parts over the last year or two, where 29 got programmed, a few projects. So there's moving parts, especially on the Indiana side. Kentucky side, it's a little more stagnant because once you're awarded, and if you get a little bit behind, you can do it the next year. In Indiana, we've got the door there. Another important point, and he mentioned it, and it kind of goes with what Jennifer was talking about too. You know, that's steady state of assumption from 27 on out is what we've been assuming. So, you know, if there's an influx or if there's a decrease in the next highway bill or infrastructure bill, you know, that number could be different. There could be completely different funding streams. They might come up with a new federal funding stream that is under MPO control. These are conservative estimates all.
That's always good. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, let's move on to number 8. We're going to be talking about safe streets and roads.
Good afternoon. Really, this is more of a important upcoming meetings announcement for the SS4A grants. The first one is on July 10th. You may have heard last month, we talked about not having a TTCC meeting, but we still want to utilize that time to have the upcoming steering committee meeting, the second one. We had the first one back in April, the second one will be July 10th. It'll be the same time as TTCC. And everybody should have got an email from me about that about a week ago. If you want to be added to the list of attendees, we can add anybody in this room, of course, and anybody that you all think should be added. I think most of the people in the TPC are probably on the list as like a primary or secondary contact. I think some of the jurisdictions add up to 3 contacts, so we set that out. Very important that everybody tries to attend. It'll be virtual as well, but in-person attendance is strongly recommended. It'll be interactive, and the consultants will be providing you guys with an update of kind of what they've been working on. They have a really cool dashboard they have lots of interesting data. They've corrected a lot and worked on a lot of the accuracy of the data. So
We've seen what they have in the works, and I think you'll all be impressed. It's gonna be great tool.
yeah, but like I said, there'll be a virtual option as well, but that one is that's kind of a big giant group meeting for everyone on July 10th. And then the other meetings are more focused on each jurisdiction. Andy just sent that out this morning to the same group of people, about 70 people. This is more locally focused. We want more than just elected officials and more than just engineers, people like, you know, EMS directors, road supervisors, police and traffic enforcement, you know, along with elected officials and engineers as well. But kind of to get that different perspective, you know, get that local knowledge. That's what they're really looking for. The information that's hard to get, you know, where is water go over the road? Where is it hard to see around a corner? Where is, you know, tree cutting to be done, or is visibility bad, or are animal strikes bad? Things like that are a lot harder to find than congestion or or crash data. So
Just to be clear, the July 10th one is everybody, all jurisdictions, same room. Or virtual room, hybrid room, whatever you call it. The later July, the July 22nd, 23rd, 25th is one-on-one, so it's KIPTA staff and the consultants. With just the St. Matthews representatives, with just the J-Town, with just the Clarksville representatives, et cetera. So it'll be one-on-one, getting really deep in the weeds in terms of what the local priorities are.
yeah, the July 22nd will be in Jeffersonville. Anybody can go to that. So, you know, if Louisville Metro wanted to go just across the river to go to Jeffersonville, they can do that. Anybody in Indiana can come to the ones that are held at KIPTA on the 23rd or the 25th. The 25th being the normally scheduled TPC meeting that we would have. We would do it before the board meeting.
Yeah, it'd be about an hour. What we've tentatively planned is for about an hour each. Okay, so an hour with J-Town, an hour with St. Matthews, an hour with Clarksville, et cetera. And so whatever time is convenient to you or to your staff is what we had in mind. And it can be hybrid if it needs to be, but in person is strongly encouraged. And if your jurisdiction can't be here, you can't get the right people here or in Jeffersonville on the days over there for that hour-long meeting. Just let us know. It was in the email I sent this morning. Just let us know. We can probably accommodate some other day in the week prior, or the week after, somewhere at the same time frame.
Yeah, and in that email, I'll just finish with, there's like not exactly a survey, but basically just pick out a meeting time. It'll have a bunch of different time slots on those days. And then, you know, just pick which one works the best for you all. And if there isn't one, like Andy said, just reach out to us and we can work something out. But that's pretty much all I have as far as an update. They'll, you know, those meetings will have a lot more of what the consultants have been doing as part of creating those safety action plans for you all. So be exciting.
All right, thank you so much. Just we're spreading the word. July 10th meeting starts at
1 p.m.
1 p.m. Okay.
Yep, here in the burger.
All right, good deal. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 9, this is urbanized area boundary locator. I've got Chris. Give us an update, Chris.
It's gonna be a short one.
Yes, yes.
I like to share my screen mainly just to show you guys where to look to find these things.
Well, she's bringing that up. I want to recognize Commissioner Schellenberger from Floyd County and Deputy Mayor George from Louisville Metro and Toby Purcell. Welcome back. That brings us up, in case you're wondering, to 16 out of 18 voting members. I don't know if that's the best attendance we've had, but I think it's pretty darn close. I think it probably is in a long time. So KIPTA staff and KIPTA in general really appreciate everybody's help.
Who's the two that missed there, right?
We won't name names,
Yeah.
but there are a couple. One deals with airplanes and one's across the road. So yeah.
Good deal. And please, Will.
So, all right. So I just want to highlight 2 new links that we have on our website. It's through the GIS services webpage. And I've got a KIPTA urban area boundaries story map that we put together. And also we have a locator tool. And real quick, the locator tool, you can put in any address. I'm going to show you guys. You put in any address and then you can see whether or not it's within the urbanized area boundary. So I'm not going to go through reading all this to you all, but basically I'll let you know that some of the items discussed is the 10-year update cycle, the nuances between the census and the federal highways definitions of urban. I've also got several links in here for the more finer details of how the census defines urban and the process and the criteria and all that stuff that we've talked about in previous meetings.
Tying in, if I might, Chris, tying in with what Brady was talking about, remember, we get the funding, the $18 million in the SDBG in Kentucky, it's based on the population in the census defined urbanized area boundary, not that larger 5-county or 5-county plus Shelby County.
Yeah. Yeah. Got a little bit of history of what happened from 2000 all the way up to 2020. And right now we have 4 urban areas. KIPTA urban, or the Louisville urban area being the larger one, over 50,000 people. The other 3 are somewhere between 5 and just shy of 50,000 people. And there's a little blurb on each of those included as well. But anyway, this is on our website now, so. Hope that some of you all will check it out, especially some of you guys helped create some of those adjustments with us. Oh, Greg. Okay. That's just gonna show the tool really quick too. The tool's got its own link, but you can link it through the story. So just as an example. Pull up Kipta. Here we are. And as you can see, we're definitely within the Louisville, Jefferson County urbanized area. And that's all I've got there. If anyone has any questions. Take them.
Any questions? Are you ready to move into, Chris, you're staying up on the next one, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, administrative modification, 13 for the next 3 years.
so. One here. I'll get to the. Oops. All right, so I do have a QR code that links to the full packet. If anyone wants to follow along, I'll be going in that order, but I'm just gonna provide a summary. We've collected a pretty wide variety of project change submissions for this admin mod. Some of them were pending of the approval of agenda item 6. So all of those got approved a few minutes ago and they'll be included. Let's see. Also, just so you all know, I'm planning to submit this to NDOT and KYTC just following this meeting. Qualifying criteria, these change submissions have been reviewed and met the criteria to be updated through administrative modification by GIPTA staff. A couple of the projects are in both the TIP and MTP, and so they're gonna have an updated total project cost. And so this one is one of the admin mods that does have that little bit within the MTP update too. That's the only reason why we can, that's the only reason that we can update the MTP through an admin mod just for that total project cost. Right, so the first 3 are the ones that Brady went into more detail. The Clarksville, Oldham County and KYTC projects there. Next, we've got some TIP funding increase and source update to KYTC's 2050. That's KIPT ID 3069. This one, I just want to point out, it's a relatively large increase, but it does remain well within the 2675 maintenance group project category threshold. So we felt that that was okay to do this one through an admin mod. Then we have 2 Louisville Metro government project updates. They're going to combine the utilities and construction for the Northeast Louisville Loop Section 2. That's ID 2269. There's no change to the total amount of the project cost. And then adjustments to funding between the phases for Cooper Chapel Road Phase 3 are going to be made. And that also is not really changing the total funding, it's just shifting funds around between phases. Next, I've got a handful of TARC project updates. KIPT ID 3176. We need to correct the funding source on that one and add some unused lapsing funds to fiscal year 24. And then there's 3 others, and those were simply just correcting the funding source. It currently says 5307 in the TIP, but it should say 5339. Then Clark County. We are shifting some phases to fiscal year 24 for the Bridge 413 project. And finally, the rest are all NDOT updates. We've got 3155, there's funding, phase shift, and open to public date updates. And 3051, we're just updating the open to public date. Then there are a handful of projects that NDOT's going to be able to complete earlier than planned, so that's pretty cool. There are phases and open to public dates, they're moving out for, or moving up for 24.95, 24.96. And then also 28.49, 48.47, and 29.15 and 29.14. So that's great. Then NDOT is removing a project. This is a project that was added in as a group project back to the old tip through an admin mod. And so we feel that we can go ahead and remove this through an admin mod since it came in that way. It's just a tip only project. And then 32.63 and 32.62 are adding some later phases that are beyond the tip years, but within the stip years. And that's all I've got.
There questions? For the episode, item number 11, we've been waiting for our director's report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, then I hope I won't disappoint, but I don't really have much except to say a couple of announcements. For those of you that have fiscal year 2024 contracts with KIPTA that you probably owe us an invoice or invoices for, we need to get your final invoice by about the 10th to 15th at the very latest of July, so the next few weeks. Okay, so those are fiscal year 24 invoices. We need to get those to us real soon. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. The other reminder is just again about the Safe Streets and Roads for All meetings. July 10th during the typical TTCC time is when we're hosting everybody. July 22nd in Jeffersonville, July 23rd at KIPTA, July 25th at KIPTA are the 1 hour meetings where you'll have to sign up using the link from the email I sent you today to do the one-on-one meetings with KIPTA/KIPTA's consultants. The July TPC meeting, just like the July TTCC meeting, we are planning to cancel that meeting. Okay, so there will not be meetings in July, or there won't be transportation meetings in July. So it'll basically be a Safe Streets and Roads for All month for our July meeting. So we'll take a summer break from TTCC and TPC, and we'll see everybody back here hopefully we'll see you in July, but we'll see you back here for a TPC meeting in August.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right, good deal. Any other business come before the board? Item number 13, motion to adjourn. We got to place. All in favor, aye. Thank you.